Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Ann, Quindy at the helm, John on comms, and Justin locked into a closet full of tribbles. How are you all today? Everybody's in shock. They're like, that was too exuberant. I decided to go Star Trek theme today. Decided we have to start doing themes. Good morning. Morning. It's morning. It's morning. My back's a little wonky, so we'll probably have a stretch halfway through stream. Alrighty, but we're organized, and we have a kitty. I'm sure that Justin is capable of feeding himself. He's probably fighting the tribbles for food. Don't tribbles like not need food though? Like, I thought they just existed. Like, they just pulled in nutrients from the air or something. I actually looked this up the other day, and I don't remember, but tribbles. Arrowiz, thank you. 31 glorious months of painting stuff. Hey, Big Eiler. Hey, everybody. You missed my brilliant intro today, but that's all right. I'll forgive you. I don't know, Quindy. I don't remember. I grew up watching the original Star Trek, like literally over and over and over, because that's what was on, and Dad loved Star Trek. Star Trek and Doctor Who. The Tom Baker Doctor Who. Ah, okay. I see. So like mice, except space mice. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's been ages for me too, but since I saw it repeatedly when I was a kid, it's still stuck in my head, and the details are fuzzy. And the tribbles. Tribbles are fuzzy, so it makes sense that details would also be fuzzy about tribbles. Alrighty. We have a kitty. Kitty is moving right along, really. Kitty is needs some more darks on his NMMs here, and mostly the upper part. But we need to do a yarn ball. And yeah, that NMM isn't touched at all, and the sword NMM isn't touched at all. So I think we'll start out with a ball of yarn, and then we'll move to NMMs. Yay! So let's get out some oranges. I think I used a drop of oxide, and I'll go with I'm gonna go with volcanic for a starter, and then I am going to highlight with underpainting. Hello, Blue Nico Fox. Doing as well as can be expected. My car is in the shop. It may be totaled. My back is kind of wonky, but you know, I'm still here and I have chocolate. And that's really, you know, chocolate and miniatures. Oh, Justin showed off cute baby pictures. Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go. So if you missed it on Reaper Live last night, if you missed the cute baby pictures and you want to see Justin's podling. No, I didn't do anything. It was actually a thief that stole my catalytic converter out of the car. And it turns out catalytic converters are really expensive. And when your car is 13 years old, so we'll see. They're going to send an appraiser out. On the plus side, my car is in very good condition for its age. Yeah, there's a rash at that lately because metals have gotten so expensive. So it's worth it to the thieves. Yep, platinum, rhodium, and one other precious metal, to be exact, Mac Attack. Though apparently now law enforcement is trying to kind of crack down on the shops that buy that stuff from these people. So, but yeah, there's just a big rash of it. I filed a police report, and then I touched base with my insurance. Hey, the good news is that at some point in the past, I upgraded my insurance, probably when I moved to California, to be just not the bare bones insurance. So I actually had comprehensive, and it actually does cover it, but the insurance company actually, because of that, the insurance company may decide it's a loss and declare the car defunct. It's rhodium and platinum and one other. Indium doesn't sound familiar, though. case, it's like, what you gonna do? I told David he got a total buy on that one because his car was also parked right in our driveway. But because the Element is higher up, it's easier to access the underside. So I told him he totally got a buy because I had a tall car. We're not going to go probably Tesla with this one. If we have to do a replacement, I don't think we're going to go Tesla right now. Yeah, that's pretty much what I thought, Chibi, is that David and I will probably buy the next car together. He wants I was actually looking at Subarus. My mom has a Subaru. I love them. I love her car anyway. And I also have a fondness for Jeeps. David wants 4-wheel drive because he wants to be able to go to the mountains to ski. So we're already talking. You know, it's not like we're heartbroken. I'm kind of heartbroken. I mean, I've had the Element since the day we brought Kiri home. So I have memories of like getting the car and then driving to the airport immediately and picking up a baby Kiri. So it's kind of sad on that, you know. We're using volcanic orange, by the way, guys, just so you know. With 4 drops of volcanic orange with 1 drop of oxide red in there. They're actually really close, you can see. But oxide gives it a little extra coverage, so I was able to thin it a lot and still get decent coverage on it. You like your Subi? Your Scooby? Oh, interesting. Yeah, electric cars do have that problem with the battery right now, and they're working on that issue. The fact that, you know, they need to make sure that the batteries are really as good as they possibly can be. Because, yeah, if it fails, it's your car. The battery is literally your car. The rest of the car is just a shell. You know, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't scare me off of electric. Like, I really, really want to support electric cars. Like, I believe that it is the way, and, like, I want to, like, save the environment. Help save the environment. I'm under no illusions that electric cars alone would save the environment, but you know, I want to make as little impact on the planet as I can just for myself. So I definitely would like an electric, but I also do road trips. And so right now that's a little bit harder. That's why I was so excited that the infrastructure plan might help with that. So yeah, we're waiting. Probably we're not going to get an electric this time, but David also has an aging car. His car is just a bit younger, a couple of years younger than mine. Yeah, at least you can still taste the coffee and smell it. The smell is almost better than the taste, I think, Crowley. But, you know, it's the opposite with tea. Unless it's jasmine tea, then the smell is, like, so good. And the taste is like, well, I guess. But, yeah, going into electric, you definitely need to know what you're going into, like, I think, is really the key there. I'm going to use this nice dark orange to kind of touch up some areas on the tail there that were getting a little bit chippy. Because since this sculpt is very rough here because of the fur texture, and this is a metal model, you're going to notice rub off. Like, especially if you're like me and you use really thin base coats, any contact at all is probably going to rub off a piece of fur. It's not a big deal. Just, you know, take a nice, like, either you can take brush on primer, touch it up, and then put a base coat over it. And if I do that, I might seal it also. Or you can just go over it with super thick, like, base coat level paint. And then after that, I would probably seal it. Normally, I'd wait till the end and do all the touch-ups at, like, once on the metal model, and then I would put a layer of brush-on sealer over it. That's my usual, like, way, but that little shiny bit was bugging me, so I decided to touch it up right now. So I'm going to wait and put another layer on this, but I'm also going to be doing some underpainting. Because it's orange, I want all these yarn strands to stand out. So I am going to put another layer of this volcanic on. I'm mostly going to stick to the shadows. Then we're going to do some white, and I'm going to put sunrise orange and some sunrise orange with yellow over the top to really make the yarn ball stand out. Oh, yeah, cinnamon, and, yep. Yeah, that's, David just bought a cinnamon, I think it was a cinnamon, gosh, I can't remember the second spice in it. Cinnamon orange, that's it. Which is a good, yeah, they're good winter teas. He bought it when we were in Pike Place Market in Seattle, because there was a tea shop, and oh, they had some nice stuff. Very, very nice stuff. So you can see how some of my base coat has gotten over the yarn here, and I'll need to use underpainting to bring that back. So I may as well mix up my pure white now so I can get started on that. Right. I don't know, but that's like, That's just the thing, right, Mac Attack? The grid won't be up to it until it has to be. Like, I've learned this in my time in America. I've learned one thing. We don't get it done until it absolutely has to be done and we have no choice. The country procrastinates. I'm convinced of it. Totally joking, but not joking. Like, I kind of feel like that. Like, after watching us, it's like, oh, we can't do a vaccine in, under 5 years. And then we had to, so we did. I think it's like a really crazy kind of thing that happens. It happens with companies too. It happened with the paint department. I'm like, we can't do this, and then Ed's like, you have to do that, and I'm like, wing, magically we do it. It's like, it's funny that. So maybe I'm wrong, but either way, I agree with you. The infrastructure is just not there right now. So until I can do road trips in my electric car somewhere other than California, because there are big charging stations out here for the most part, you can plan around that. But yeah, until I can do a road trip, I'm not like all into the electric car. Because I do, given I'm getting older and I don't like to drive really long distances, but I need to be able to do the 8-hour chunks at least, so I'm with you on that. That said, our thought, I think, though I haven't checked out David with this, but I think our thought is we want the 4-wheel drive standard car for David's skiing and just for general dog road trips and dog shows, and if I go to dog shows and all that other stuff, but then when David's car goes, I would probably argue for at least a hybrid at that point. Solar panels. I actually would really love that, like a la The Martian, right? Trick your car out in solar panels. I would be very happy to put see roofs that are just like one big, solar panel. I actually think it would look kind of cool, but that's just me, and most other people want sunroofs. I guess solar panel would make it impossible to have a sunroof, right? That's what they're doing at our school down the road, Crowley. They, I think they're putting in a big shader over half the parking lot, and I think it's solar on top, and it's got electric charging, stuff like that. But yeah, I've heard, I have friends who have owned hybrids for years and like them, and so yeah, we'll see. We got it. David and I have to sit down together, see what our choices are, do some test driving, or maybe it is possible, because the lady on the phone yesterday said that since the Element is so old, she said I may get lucky because they can get aftermarket parts from older cars that may fit the Element because of its age, where I wouldn't have to get a new part, and that may enable us to fix the Element for less than it's worth. Oh yeah, I would love that, Mac Attack. Yeah, see, I think there's a lot of power, an intention going toward trying to make the battery stuff work. We also need better storage, right? Once we can produce the energy, we need to have the capability of storing it all, and that seems to be a big pain point also. So it's fascinating to read about the technology, because I had no idea that there was a problem. They're like, oh, we have plenty of solar energy, we just can't store it because apparently our big batteries can't store that sort of power or that much power. I'm not sure. I don't know the details, but you could look into it. So I think there's a lot of money going into battery tech right now. I think people have realized that that's the next big point. So it's exciting. It's exciting to live. This is why I want to live till I'm 100, because every year, technology just shifts and jumps. It seems like every year, couple of years, some new thing comes out, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah, isn't great in snow, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what we're thinking, Carrie, especially because David likes to drive to Tahoe in the winter to do his skiing. And he always has to stop and put on the chains on his little Honda Fit. And not that he wouldn't still put on chains, but he would like to have a 4-wheel drive, which I don't, in the mountains, I can totally see it. So yeah, we'd kind of like the heavy duty car that gets used for like road trips like that, vacations, the dog car, you know, that sort of thing, and then get a nice little hybrid or something for just scooting around town, or electric for scooting around town. Hey, dog father, good day. We're talking about cars today simply because my car might be dead, so we're talking about car strat. But yeah, I think David is very interested in a Subaru because I told him I really loved my mom's, and she loves her car. Like, she loves it. And she drove me around in it when I was home to visit for my niece's graduation. I love the layout. I love the huge dashboard panel. Like, that GPS screen is so huge. Like, you never have to squint. Like, you just glance at it. Like, it's awesome. I love it. Because I use GPS a lot. But yeah, mostly I think we do need 2 cars because of the puppy. Because Shepherd, I always wanted it, just in case of emergencies, right? Some emergencies, I really can't wait. I can't, like, just call David and say, get home now. The puppy needs to be rushed to the vet. You know, that loses us time. And even though I never had that happen with any of my previous dogs, I'm still like, my brain is like, wants to plan for catastrophe just so I'm prepared. You own a Subaru, Red Links? Do you like it? That's awesome, Mac Attack. Are you into this? Like, is this one of your things that you like to follow? Because it seems like you know the stuff. Yeah, Ford, I never was a Ford fan, but when they put out that electric F-150 and really committed to, like, hybrid and electric, like, my opinions are changing. Like, I'm kind of impressed with Ford lately. And this is coming from somebody whose first car was a Chevy. It's the old joke about the Ford versus Chevy war. But then I got a Honda, and I love my Honda. So, but Honda, David didn't think Honda had a good 4-wheel drive option. So, alrighty, so we've got our yarns all kind of, yeah, Big Apple. That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, so there was one ReaperCon, guys, where Cheryl Storm rented an F-150 as just the runaround car and carry stuff car to the con center and stuff. And oh my god, that thing was fun to drive. Like, I know they're gas guzzlers, I know they're huge, I know they're all these disadvantages to the F-150, but oh my gosh, I see why it's the most popular pickup in America, because it's so fun to drive. Yeah, there's some nice cars out there. Like, that's also kind of why I held off. Like, I know the Element is very long in the tooth, but it was in really good shape, and so I was holding off because I'm like, it's kind of like 3D printing for me. The longer I hold off, the better the tech will be for, like, just me getting into it, right? So I was thinking, you know, if I can keep the Element going for long enough, then people, you know, companies will really get onto the electric car and hybrid car, like, you know, train, and they'll have some really awesome options, and, you know, maybe the price will get a little bit lower because there'll be competition and stuff like that. So it's not the best time for me to be looking for a car right now, but it's not the worst either. Alrighty. Yeah, it's interesting times. Yeah, the F-150 Lightning. I know. Yeah. I mean, 320 miles. Yeah. I feel you there. Could be worse. Here in California, that's not as bad because there are a lot of charging stations. So if you're going, like, down the coast to LA, you're going to be okay probably. But yeah, getting out into, like, the Southwest, where I really like to drive, and where a lot of people I like to visit live, like going through all that desert area with nothing, yeah, not so much. Yes, it is. The ball of yarn is awesome. Yeah, I know, War Shadow. I think that's because of shortages and stuff. I would prefer to buy a used. That's the other thing. That's kind of another reason I was waiting. I don't like the depreciation on a new car, but you know, we'll do what we have to. All right, so we've got our orange really kind of, and you can see where I've made the orange heavier, right? Where the dark orange is heavier and where it's lighter here. That's where shadows and highlights are going to be. So now I'm going to go in with my white and kind of reinforce that by painting over some of these little strands. You could probably use the side of the brush and do a side brushing technique on this. It wouldn't be as neat. But if you don't have awesome brush control, then you can use the side of the brush to hit these little strands. Just make sure your paint is really, like you've unloaded your brush a lot. Almost to the point of dry brushing. Because you really want to be able to just like brush the brush real lightly over the surface. And only have the paint go on those raised strands like I just did right there. I think that the car makers are shifting, so I think it takes time, Dabber. Like they'd have to rework a lot of those, right? Because it's all old designs. That would take a lot of R&D time and engineering time and factory time that they're currently like trying to put into their electric or hybrid models. I think so that's probably why. I mean, I wish that Honda would put out a new Element. I would buy a new Element in a second. I love my car. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Oh, wait, I have to sing. I must sing. I must sing. Double subiversary, double subiversary, double subiversary. Happy double subiversary to Shadow Raven. 2 years of listening to me prattle on. Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, the gas prices are a little bit wonky. I mean, much as people are complaining about the current situation, it seems like things are bouncing back a bit, like, pretty fast. Like, as far as, like, you know, you could expect to be in a recession for years, but maybe, you know, we can get a handle on it. I don't know. I'm not a financial expert in any means. But it seems like it seems like people are saying that inflation is going to go down again because they'll hike interest rates and do other stuff and, you know, whatever. Yeah, but anyway, enough about gas prices and silly taxation and weird pricing stuff. More about cars. What's your favorite car color, guys? Like, I have the Element and it's orange. And David has his Fit and it's teal. So we have orange and teal, which is David's favorite color scheme, but I don't know if I can accept this. I think I might need a purple car next. I actually love economics, and that's why I don't want to get into it. I read books on economics because I think it's fascinating. Because it's all about human behavior, right? Yeah, when you've had a bad experience with a company, it's hard to get your brain around, like, considering them again. I totally get that, Agent Marvel. Mazda Soul Red, huh? I'll have to look it up. Metallic Forest Green. Electric Blue. Yeah. See, that I always wanted an electric blue Corvette when I was a kid. Our neighbor across the street had an old Stingray that was electric blue and all chromed out to blazes. Oh my gosh, I loved that car. I'm not, you know, in the market for a Corvette. I'm not in the market for a midlife Chrysler or a midlife Chevy or a midlife anything. but I do still have a soft spot for Corvettes. And I do still love electric blue. Yeah, see, HM, that's what I've got. And I'm, be aware. Whoa, did you come in late? Because HM, the reason that my Element might be dead is that thieves stole its catalytic converter. Be aware, this is happening a lot. So keep yours in a garage if you can. Because it's up higher, and so it's easy for the thieves to get underneath it, is what my mechanic said. Because it's on a higher chassis. So be careful, or you too may lose your beloved car. I'm crossing fingers that I won't lose mine, but that's why we're talking about cars today, because they might total it. It's a huge expense to fix it, and it's a 13-year-old car. Best purple car you've seen with this set. I've seen a purple Tesla, and my old car, I used to have a Plymouth that was Plymouth Breeze that was purple. Really dark, like eggplant purple. Really pretty car. I loved that car. But yeah, so be careful. Yeah, you do, because it has your tools in it. That's good, HM. Yeah, that was our problem, is we've got a very small garage. Well, nobody, I mean, I think there are very few people here in this city that actually use their garages for garages. It seems like they almost all use them as an extra, like, either extra storage or they build it out into an extra room. Because the climate here isn't extreme, so you can still use the garage, even if it's not insulated. You can use the garage in almost all seasons. Yeah, right. Siphoning gas was a thing when I was in high school. Yep, and breaking and stealing radios, I know, right? But now they have to steal something that's worth $3,000, so then your car gets totaled. I didn't know about this even until yesterday, so. But yeah, I loved my purple car. I loved my orange car. I was joking that the next one had to be green, so I can fulfill the secondary triad. Because I went from purple to orange, so, right? We need a green car, and David hates green. There's no way he's going to agree to let me fulfill my secondary color triad. Yeah, Kadra shield. Priuses were apparently getting targeted, and so Prius started doing a shield. Hey, Lord Gasumba, thank you for the raid. Sorry for the car talk, everybody. This is not, in fact, NPR car talk. I am not nearly as funny as those guys, but my name is Anne, and I am a part-time employee of Reaper Miniatures, and we paint Reaper minis on this show. And we are working on Kitty, who is actually Catfolk, aka you could use it as a Tabaxi Paladin. So thanks, and you guys were just doing D&D, huh? Cool. Cool. Very spiff. Thanks, Lord Gasumba. I appreciate it. We're talking about cars just now because my car is probably going to get totaled, but we don't know for sure, so we're waiting. Waiting on word once the insurance company gets done with us. But anyway, so I'm doing some white highlights on this yarn, and the white is not going to stay. The white is actually going to get painted over. Yeah, with a lighter orange. I started with a darker orange called Volcanic Orange from Reaper's Bones range. It's the Reaper Bones MSP Master Series paint. And I added 1 drop of a brand new color that just came out, which is, it's from the Core Colors range, and it's Oxide Red. Oxide is, it's a pure pigment, so it's a single pigment color. And the oxides all have good coverage, so you can add them to similar colors and not shift the color too much, but get better coverage out of them. Yeah, Asher, I know. I'm kind of like not looking forward to it. I mean, we have a backup car, my fiance's car. But his car is also old, so it's like would not be great timing. Like, yeah, it's That said, if we've got to do it, we've got to do it, so we'll just have to kind of figure it out. Oh, you like Volcanic Orange, huh? Well, good. I think it's a really nice dark orange. Like, we haven't had a good dark orange. I think that wasn't, like, super red, and this is a really nice one. So I'm glad you like it. So we're underpainting with white. So underpainting is just where you paint in, like, kind of the highlight color in white, and then you put your real color over the top of it. And the reason you would do this is if you're working with a color like orange that doesn't have great coverage. In that case, trying to work up a lighter orange over the top of this dark orange would be really difficult, take a ton of layers, and also just probably just frustrate the heck out of you. Whereas if you do the underpainting with white, you can put that transparent orange color over the top of it. And because it doesn't cover very well, it's going to not really shift the dark orange very much, but over the white, it will show up well. Oh, they're very different, Turgeon. They're completely different pigments. Like, this is the thing to understand about pure pigment colors, like the Chimera colors and other colors that are single pigment. The reason that this exists and is an interesting thing is that different pigments have, like, completely different qualities. But red oxide is more of an orange rust color. It is not even close to what you would think of as a crayon red. However, next to the other oxides like yellow and brown, it definitely looks red, and you can mix it into reds with very little color shift. So, at least until you really start to load it on. So it's just got a completely different completely different chemical makeup, and it's much higher coverage than any red pigment out there, except for maybe cadmium red, the actual cadmium red. That is a cat with a ball of yarn coat of arms. You are correct, Asher. Reaper makes this model. It's this one. So this is metal, actually. I'm not sure if he's out in bones, but I think he's awesome. So, and it's Julie Guthrie who sculpted him, and she's here in the chat under the moniker Green Users. He's fantastic. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I have to do the sword and finish up more of the metal, but I decided I wanted to paint the ball of yarn first. Yeah, it is an awesome figure. A lot of the Catfolk actually are really good. I like the mage too. I have the mage over in the closet of doom that she maybe become a project on the stream. We'll see. I did think about going to a new Catfolk after this one because I enjoyed this Catfolk so much. So now I've got it highlighted more or less where the highlights would fall, around the upper rim, highlights on each strand to pick out highlights on each little kind of tuck where the ball is round around. So now I want a lighter orange, and I'm probably going to reach for Sunrise Orange, which is also a Bones color. So these two are right next to each other. It's 9405 and 9406. This is not a mistake. And for highlights, I think I'm just going to continue in the progression like this. And you can use these colors as a triad, though the Reaper Bones line doesn't have triads of shadow, midtone, and highlight like the core range does. These three colors can absolutely be used this way. So I will go over my underpainting with the Sunrise Orange, and then I'm going to mix a Lantern Yellow with just a touch of Sunrise Orange in it, and come back for a final highlight on the yarn ball. So let's grab our Sunrise Orange. Here's our paint so far. Look. So 4 drops. Oh, if my bottle actually responds to PokeTool. Yes, this is the Reaper PokeTool. It has a skull on it. Because Reaper, they actually do sell them. If you use dropper bottles, it's a good idea. It's nice because it has that big flat skull, so you can really get a good grip on it. But you can just use like a T-pin or any kind of pokey implement. Yeah, it's a pretty logical triad to use. There are just some times where I saw the blues can be used that way too. There's a progression of blues that you can make a couple of different triads out of. Sadly, my Lantern Yellow is almost out, so it is definitely giving me moments. It's like, I am almost out of paint and I don't want to function. I'm going to go 4-1 with this, almost a base coat, because oranges don't cover great. Sunrise actually covers better than most. I'm going to go 2. Why? Man, it just seems like lately my dropper bottles are wanting to clog for some reason. Which are weird, because all I've got in here is water and a little bit of flow improver. There we go. Much better. Just had a tiny little backup in there. All right, so I'm gonna rinse. Ah, Lotus Orange. Lotus Orange is very salmon-y Polis art. I think it would not go well with this. If you were gonna do a triad there, I would actually take the Lotus Orange. For a shadow, I would add a drop of Fire Red, 9004. And then I would just probably add... Yeah, then you could go up to Lantern. But Lotus is definitely a reddish, kind of corally orange. Static, it's mostly water, but you can see from the bubbles in it, it's got a tiny bit of flow improver added to it. I have a regular water bottle and I have a bottle of flow improver, and I don't really make a distinction between the two. Reaper paint has flow improver added to every color before it's even bottled. So extra flow improver is not necessary. It's just, for me, I think it's more of a habit, because I use other paints too. So when I'm not using Master Series, I definitely want that flow improver solution. So that's why I just keep this. Extra flow improver is like one of the only additives that's not really going to harm your paint, depending, you've got to thin it. It comes as a concentrate normally. So if you're not using the Reaper brand, if you're using an artist brand, you already should be thinning it like 20 to 1. But doing a few extra drops of something that's mostly water is not really gonna hurt your paint. Other additives definitely can hurt your paint in various ways if you add too much. But because of that, I don't, like, even though I've got this out because I was working with Scale 75 tube paint, and I definitely want to add flow improver to those, adding the extra flow improver to the MSP isn't gonna hurt it. Does this make sense? I'm going to add a little bit of my orange to my yellow, just to darken it a tad, bringing it more in line with what I'm looking at. So you can see that even though this is thinned double this is still pretty thin. And that's what I want, because I'm going to paint it over this white. I want it to color the surface, but I don't want it to, like, really have high coverage. Yeah, no problem. It's actually what I'm all about here, Static. I've got... I created Reaper Master Series paint line. Like, I was the person. For 15 years, I hand mixed almost every batch. And I created all the formulations. I learned enough paint chemistry to make myself dangerous. I worked with chemists and our salespeople to research new products. I did all that. I've named every color up until I left and moved out here to be with my guy in 2020. I was pretty much Master Series paint. So just painting this orange gently over the top. And I'm not just painting over the white. I am going over a little bit of the darker orange as well, so that I get a little bit of a gradient ideally. But yeah, if you have any questions about Reaper paint or most paint, because a lot of hobby paint is pretty much the same stuff, ask away. I am your girl. I can reply with an eye toward the chemistry. So I'm going to just paint over those strands so that I'm painting over the white. But yeah, so sometimes on this stream I will go into the paint chem. Not often, because a lot of it, although it's interesting to know, doesn't really have a direct application as far as you guys like getting better paint jobs. But it is useful to know stuff like the fact that the oxides have higher coverage. They're a single pigment. They're very different from a red pigment, you know. So Nago, flow improver is made up of what's called surfactants, a chemical compound called a surfactant. Surfactants are present in a lot of solutions, and their goal is, what their use is to bind the stuff in the solution together. So you will find surfactants in dish soap, binding together all the ingredients of your dish soap. That's actually what, when you see that suds, the bubbles, that's surfactants. So surfactants make foamy things, but mostly they're a binder. So in paint, the purpose of surfactants is to hold things together in solution, and depending on what pH level you're working with and the characteristics of the pigments you're using, you may use different ones to get optimal results. Now, that said, this is why adding flow improver helps your paint not separate, because the surfactants, remember, their job is to hold things together. So up to a certain point, surfactants will help to hold things together much better than normal water. They won't do as good a job as, say, a medium or a sealer. Like our brush-on sealer, we can use it as a matte medium. So when you're really hitting it with a lot of water, any paint's going to break down unless you're using mediums as well. But in general, one of the functions of surfactants is to hold things together. Now, the second thing that flow improvers can do, because it's not just about that, flow improvers actually have two functions, and different brands tend to do different things better. So the first one is to hold everything in solution, but the second one is to break surface tension. So that is also useful in paint because obviously if you break surface tension, the paint will go on smoother. It'll come off your brush easier. It'll enable you to do finer lines. That's why I just use flow improver. I do a lot of micro detail. I like to do very fine detail. It helps me do that. The best flow improvers are kind of a mix of these two things. But some of them you'll notice are far more into the surface tension breaking side, and some of them are just going to be better at keeping things in solution, but you don't notice much of a difference as far as the surface tension. That's what flow improvers do. That's what they are. And that's kind of why adding extra flow improver, if you've properly thinned it, doesn't hurt your paint. You're just putting in more surfactant, something that's already there, and you're making it flow a little bit better and stay a little better in solution when you add a little extra binder, water. So, like I said, there are limits because it is a very watery solution. Flow improvers are thinned often 20-to-1 with water because you don't want to add it like straight in necessarily. There is a point where you'll compromise the chemistry, but in general, like because most flow improvers for miniature painting are pre-thinned, or if you buy like the artist stuff, the Winsor & Newton, do read the label, do thin it, do put it in a separate bottle. But yeah, that's what flow improver's for. So water works great thinning Master Series paint because we do have flow improver already added to our paint. So I can dispense with this. I could go and grab my bottle of regular water, and with this paint, I would have no problems. But the thing is that I'm not always working with MSP. Much as I love it, much as I made it, I also really like the Scale Color Artist line, for example. So that's why I keep my flow improver bottle right here on my table, and why I end up using it a lot instead of my water bottle, because I want my default bottle to have the flow improver for when I'm working with paints that don't actually have that flow improver added up front like MSP. No, well, okay, so first, understand that this is 95% water. So your ratio to add to paint, you aren't actually adding flow improver to the paint. You are adding water to the paint that happens to have flow improver mixed into it. So the ratio that you add to the paint has nothing to do with the flow improver and everything to do with how much am I thinning my paint for this technique. So you would never add raw flow improver to your paint. You would mix up a bottle of water solution that has a little bit of flow improver in it, and you would use this to thin all your paint. And how much you thin your paint is like, I go 4 or 5 to 1, so paint to water, 4 or 5 drops of paint, 1 drop of water for base coating. Then as I get down to like different levels of things here, I'm going to thin more if I'm going to do glazing or a wash or whatever. But yeah, you're never going to add, unlike me figuring out how much flow improver I needed to add to Master Series paint in the bucket to mix up a batch, you're never going to do that as a hobbyist. You're going to use a mixture. And if you want flow improver in your mix, just do it this way. Now, you can also, for example, if you're doing a 1-to-1 mixture, say, so 4 drops roughly of paint, and then you're thinning it way down because you're going to layer or you're going to glaze or whatever, you could do a thing like 4 drops of water and then 1 drop of flow improver mix if you wanted less. But that's really kind of just, I think, you really won't notice much of a difference there. It's just you have so little flow improver in the mix usually, and you'd have to really load it in to see a huge difference, and then you would be probably compromising the paint a bit. So in general, if you're going to use flow improver, mix yourself up a dropper bottle that's at most, like at the absolute highest concentration, I would go 10-to-1. So 1/10 of the bottle is flow improver, and then 9/10 are water. Or you can, Reaper does it pre-mixed. Their flow improver is pre-mixed. You can thin it a little bit. It'll be just fine. But that's up to you. But we didn't want you to have to take the flow improver and have a separate bottle and put it in there and then add a bunch of water like Winsor & Newton does. Art companies tend to assume that painters are going to do a lot more work to get the product, to use the product. Whereas hobby painters really just want a bottle they can add to something and be done. So it's market, really, that keeps us from doing that, is that people's expectation is that you're just going to squeeze the product out and it's going to work. Kind of like you expect to be able to rip the mini out of the package and game with it, right? People, to this day, Reaper gets emails about people saying their model is broken because they ordered a model with 2 separate pieces and they don't understand that it's supposed to be that way and they have to glue it together. Like, to this day. And I cannot even tell you how many hundreds, probably even thousands of such emails we have received over my 19 years with the company. So yeah, the whole give it to you in a bottle ready to go thing, it's real. It's real. So Reaper Flow Improver is in the bottle ready to go. You would just use it in place of water, or you'd use half and half that and water if you wanted to, but like I said. Alrighty, so let's do, now we want our yellow highlight. And I'm kind of feeling like I want to actually mix white into this and get my yellow really strong, so I can just do a small touch highlight instead of doing another underpainting thing and then going more into it. So let's get close so you can see my ball o' yarn. But yeah, a lot of painters overthink this stuff, and you really don't need to. I mean, a little bit of flow improver in your water is great. Just go with that. Trying to fine tune it at that point is not really worth it. Like, there is no fine tuning. Like, is going to work kind of the same no matter how much you add, unless you're adding too much or too little. Pre-rendered battle damage, right, static. But people do that. They actually write to Reaper and want a replacement model because they don't understand that it didn't arrive broken. It actually is supposed to be glued together. So it's a thing. It's a thing in our hobby. Like, art products, if you buy products that are meant for acrylic painting on canvas, you're going to get a big instruction label that tells you all the different things that you can do with XYZ, right? You can mix paint in this, you can mix mediums into this, you can do this, you can do that, you can, you know, and it gives you the raw product and then lets you play with it. Whereas in our hobby, it's much more an out-of-the-box hobby where we try to make it as easy for you as possible, because that's just the expectation in our hobby. It's very prevalent, and it's just because they're not reading or they're not used to the format. I mean, if you don't know to look for those icons, it's not like they're shoving it in your face. It's not like a flag comes up on your screen when you order the mini saying, hey, just so you know, this is in multiple parts and you will need glue. You know, it's just it's an icon, right? And it's good to have it there because then we can say, well, we told you. But at the same time, like if I go to a miniature company that I don't know, and I'm on their website, I'm not going to pick up on all those icons. I'm just going to be looking at the pretty mini going, I want that one. You know, even I would do this. Like, I just ordered models from Signum Games. I have no idea if they're multi-part or not. You know, I didn't see. If they had an indicator, I didn't see. So I think when you're not used to it, when you don't know to look for those things, it can be harder. So I'm just mixing a little walnut, by the way, into my dark orange here, volcanic orange. I feel like I blorfed a little bit there. I want to correct that line, so I'm mixing. It actually makes a really pretty dark brown, medium orangey brown. It'll let me do a little bit of a shadow here. I got a little bit too exuberant with my my pale highlight there. But yeah, I mean, we do, I mean, and I every once in a while, although I try very hard to read everything when I'm ordering things online, I do have basic comprehension fails myself from time to time, so I get how people do it. Now, some people do it all the time just because they're too impatient to read, and that's kind of frustrating, but it is the way it is. All right, so just a little bit of that yellow. You can see a little bit of that yellow to hit that upper part of that ball of yarn. Now I'm going to do a section right here. I'm not going to do it real close to the line there. I'm going to do it a little bit below, right in the middle of this orange stripe. And my yellow looks like this. That's about where I am at. I mixed white into my lantern yellow to make that color. Adding white to the lantern yellow made it lighter so it could be used as a more effective highlight, and it also gives it better coverage so that I can get these little lines down. So if I have better coverage, I can hit these individual strands of yarn and it's going to show up. If I don't have good coverage, I'm not going to be able to get this to look clear. Like the visual information will be all muddy. It won't stand out. Lantern yellow by itself is pretty translucent, and so it can go that way. Now, one other thing is, if I feel like I've overwhelmed like my middle orange area and done too much yellow, I can glaze over this with either the orange or the yellow, or a mixture of both, or even just the yellow, and see how it looks if I feel like I've overwhelmed my orange a bit. I'm being pretty persnickety on here, but hey, it's a coat of arms. I want it to look cool. Also, this is, because the shield is held this way, this is actually a viewing angle for the mini. Like, people will absolutely, they'll look at the mini from this angle, then they'll look at the mini from the back, and then they're going to see that shield, and they're going to turn it. So I call these things viewing angles. It means essentially somebody's going to look at your model from this angle. There are some models very much that are double angle minis. There's a front and a back. If the shield wasn't here, this mini would be 2 viewing angles, and so you would mostly have to concern yourself with it looking right from those 2 viewing angles. But if there's an extra viewing angle, then people are going to look at it. That means I'm going to spend a little extra time on this side, more time than I might normally, because I know someone is going to be looking over here. So viewing angles are something I always keep in mind when I'm doing non-metallic metal, because I have to be able to make sure that the metal looks right from every prime viewing angle. So from the front, from the back, and now I need to make sure that this metal reads correctly from the side as well. There are also, you can use the prime viewing angle thing also when you're building dioramas, and you should. Or if you're trying to do like a dynamic piece where 2 models are battling each other. I always turn the model all around in a circle and just kind of look and make sure that all of the main angles are exciting. Like, there should never be a dead zone where I turn the model or the group of models to a specific angle and it's boring. I should never have that. It should always be dynamic and exciting. So when you're planning like a duel or a diorama piece, or even when you're doing a big monster and maybe you're reposing some limbs, oops, blorf, painted over 2 strands there. Putting some water on it, do a little bit of a scrub. It wasn't set yet, so I can just use the water to essentially take that off, and then I'm just going to dry off my brush and pull the extra water off. Give it a second to dry, and then we'll be able to go back in. That's water is your reset button. If you blorf, hit some water, just drop water onto it right away. These highlights are dry. They're not going to be affected by that water, but this highlight is brand new, and it can be affected by the water, and it can help you scrub up that mistake. Alrighty. You can even see that I still have water on my brush. See? A little bit damp. But as long as your paint is set with acrylics, it's fine. So here's a trick that will make you freak out, but it's real. If you're like me and you paint over a palette or you paint over a wet palette and you drop your mini right into a well of paint, the first thing I do is to reach over and just drop my entire model into the water jug. So my water cup, I'll just, if I dropped this model into one of these wells, I would just drop it in the water cup immediately. People see me do this at Paint Club and they would freak out. And it's like, no, you don't get it. If I do this now, I can save the mini. Otherwise, it's a repaint. So none of the paint that's already cured is going to be loosened up by water, especially if you're working on a metal model. And it's already cured on, it's already like nice and hard. It's not going to just dissolve. Whereas the paint that you just dropped it in is wet. So then I'll pick the mini out of the water cup, and I'll just kind of take a big brush and I'll kind of scrub the water all over it where I dropped it into the paint. Then I'll dip it back in, and usually that's enough to save it. Let it dry and you can begin painting again. But you got to be quick, because if the edge of that paint dries, you're going to have to paint over that part again. So it's a reflex with me now. Alrighty, we've got that dry. Now I can re-go in with the yellow and try to hit that yarn one more time. A little bit. I think I went a little bit too much there. So I'm actually going to take my volcanic orange. Remember my dark orange I started with. I'm going to drop a little bit more water into it. And I'm going to paint that actually over the edge where I feel like I went too far. Yes, it is a ball of yarn, Trashorama. That's part of what makes this model so awesome. There, so a little bit of paint over this lighter stuff. Means that I can tune it a little. Kitty cat yarn. And now we've got another piece of orange, which is great because we needed more orange from this viewing angle. So I want to have orange in a bunch of different spots to carry the eye around the figure. So we've got the ear up there with the yarn now and the bottom. And here we've got the face and the tail and the paws. So we've successfully like brought orange into play around the figure. And this is nice having it on the shield because before we would have been really attracted. Our eye would have wanted to stare down here at this orange. But now our eye is more likely to go from the yarn to the ear and down. Like it's more likely to travel around and catch all the details. Canvas painters tend to think about this more than miniatures painters do, but it's a thing. All right, I got to get my yellow highlights onto my little strands of yarn. And I'm just using my yellow, but you can see that picking up the light on those strands. There we go. So then it really stands out on that shield. Looks really 3D, huh? That's what we want. We wanted it to stand out. So that's really cool. That pops a lot. Stands out really well against the purple and black. We will go in and put some highlights on the purple and black, but not this time. I think I'm going to neaten up my edges with my walnut brown, and then we'll go over and do some metals. Oh no. When you think you've blorfed, take some water. Scrub it off. Yeah, this kitty is awesome. It's a great model. So, okay, here in the kitty pantheon of gods, like whose symbol is a ball of yarn? Like, if you were making up a catfolk pantheon, which god or goddess would get the ball of yarn? And what would their spheres be? Spheres of influence, that is. Muse. Hearth and home, you think? So like Bast? Just putting a little bit of a shadow around the edge of the ball of yarn here with my walnut, just a little bit. Creation. So the ball of yarn is like, the cats think that the creation god wove the world out of a ball of yarn, playing with it. That would be awesome. Actually, I like that a lot, Shadow Raven. Creator god or goddess playing with ball of yarn creates the world out of snarls. I like that. That explains, and that's why the catfolk say the world is just so confusing. is because it was created with snarls. That would be the god or goddess of discord, I think, would be the cat god that knocks things off tables, the patron god of knocking things off. Like Eris from Greek mythology. A ball of cosmic yarn. There are worse magic systems out there. Alrighty, let's get some silver colors actually figured out, because I need to. There's a lot of NMM that I really haven't finished all down this side of the model. This side of the model's looking pretty good at this point, but not so much the other parts. So alright, let's flip our palette, since I'm working with a different set of colors. So I'm going to flip it this way. Still keep the walnut because I use that. We are going to make our thing. Now, for my models, I tend to keep track of colors on index cards, where I make swatches of my colors that I've used, and also make a note of the formulation. There are lots of ways to do this. You can do it with paint apps, or some paint apps will let you do it. And you can also just take a picture of, you know, the colors next to your model on your phone and keep that organized into a folder. But I like having I like the tactile feel of working with the watercolor paper cards. So hello, Val. How's it going? Do you like all these ideas? Like green users? Like we should have the kitty cat pantheon now? Should you sculpt those? Yarn as the sun, the god of laziness and comfort. And the cat god knocked the ball of yarn out of the sky and created the world by snarling it. Yes, I love this. This is my tabaxi race. Like if I ever run D&D again and someone plays a tabaxi, or maybe even if they don't, I'll just make a tabaxi storyline. I'm totally using this origin story. Yeah, I'm happy it's Friday today. I'm happy I still have my a good portion of my lazy summer left. Although now it's less than 4 weeks till I drive to get my new puppy, so... Or fly to get my new puppy and then drive my new puppy home. Alright, so our base color is very blue. I wanted to go very sky metal on this guy, so Moonstone Blue and Carbon Gray, which is our beautiful charcoal gray. It's mostly the blue with just a touch of the gray, but the gray is very, very strong, and so it colors the blue a lot. Still, it does give us more of a bluish steel look. You love this? You love that cat origin story? Awesome. Yeah, so the sun god or goddess is probably a god that they have in common, except the cats view the sun as a different thing than the other humanoids do. Yeah, that sounds great. I like this idea. All right, and I need to get a little bit of a real thin down shadow color mixed up. So I'm going to grab, again, my Carbon Gray, but this time I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go with 4 drops of Carbon Gray and 1 drop of my Moonstone Blue. Then I'm going to thin it way down. And by that I mean at least 1-to-1 paint to water. So, there. Five drops of paint, 5 drops of water. I'm going to mix it up and see what I got. It's a good idea. I mean, if it's not too crazy, like, I think it's a good idea, Julie. It gives the mini so much personality and people love it. I mean, look at all the ridiculous things people want me to paint on the scroll for the wizard we're working on right now. So you know people like comedy. And you know what? If they didn't like the yarn, you could take a file and just take it off. It would take a little bit of work. Or you could putty over it. I imagine there is a cat god of music, because cats like to yowl and hear themselves meow. So, you know, to anybody else, maybe it doesn't sound like music. You know what, though? I bet that the cat god of music is also the cat god of love. There we go. And we'll get that mixed up. That's just straight up moonstone. I am going to put a tiny bit of this gray into it, just because I don't want to bring this up too blue. And I will still be putting some water in it. Yeah, the yarn is part of the sculpt. I don't really do sculpting on this stream, Kodiak. Sometimes we do basing sculpting, but I don't tend to do big sculpting on this. It's not really the correct stream for it, in my opinion. One brush. And then one moon and one white. I'm going to mix up all my colors. But yeah, if you see something like that, assume that it is a part of the sculpt. I mean, I guess I could have freehanded it, but you can see that it's sculpted on. See, there you go. I guess it could look just freehanded at this point, so I totally understand if you thought it was. Alrighty, now we've got a nice progression of colors for our non-metallic metal. Mixed up and ready to go. Oh, except our white was compromised. It got a little bit of orange in it, so now I have to actually mix up another puddle of pure white, as my previous white is orange white. And we'll mix that 2 to 1. And then we'll have everything set up. I like to mix everything up in advance and just run with it. I've got about 20 minutes. I should be able to get a lot of NMM finished in that time when I'm just working with small plates. Okay, so our colors are here. That's our base coat. That's the gray that we started out with. There's an intermediate highlight, a top highlight, and then our final highlight on the very shiny parts of the armor. And there's our shadow. I may not need both of those highlights. Maybe I only need one of them. We'll find out. Sometimes I will mix up an extra highlight and then just end up not using it, because I can do spot blends with just one of them in white and get my effect that I wanted. So it changes. So I'm going to go with my highlight, but not pure white, and I'm going to make all of these upper surfaces lighter, because they would be catching the light. I am going to leave a little bit of a shadow area just under where the plate overlaps. But any area that is facing the sky, tilted upward, is going to catch light. Then when you get down to the knee here, you've got more of a problem. Well, not a problem, but you know, you've got a plate that curves up at the top but down at the bottom. So right at the point where that falls away, where it stops pointing up, is where your highlight's going to stop. So you're going to have a shadow under there. I'm going to grab my shadow. Yeah, totally. It would make it more fun, Julie. I can see. I would do that too. I love the ball of yarn. And hey, now it's given us a really cool origin story, so everybody should love the ball of yarn. So I've essentially accentuated that demarcation there. I'm going to futz with that a little bit because it's a little bit wrong shaped. I do want to highlight more on the interior here, and I want to accentuate that shadow. So a lot of non-metallic metal is just kind of blocking in your basics and then futzing with things until they start looking shiny and correct. And to know whether they're correct, it really just requires that you kind of wander around the world looking at metal stuff until you kind of grok it. When I was trying to figure out how to paint non-metallic metals, I was looking at metal stuff constantly in the environment, trying to figure out the rules for it, or to make the rules that I had read for it make sense to me in my head. And once you've looked at a lot of metal and you kind of like parse it in your head with the rules that you've been told for NMM and you see how those things line up, that's when you can start to kind of get a gut feel for whether this really looks like metal or not, right? Otherwise, it's very difficult. Even if you think you know what metal looks like, it's very difficult. I've definitely had people walk up to me at Paint Club thinking something looks like metal, but it didn't. And vice versa, thinking that something didn't look like metal, but I thought it looked great. So I think that with non-metallic metals, just practice and adjustment. Not just painting a lot of models and trying to make them look like metal, but once you've painted it, if it's not correct, kind of looking at it and really trying to figure out why will make you progress faster. So now I'm going to get this inner edge. And on the very tiny plates, I might only highlight the very edge. And the tiny little bolt there holding the armor together. So I'm bringing this up more. I want this highlight to come up more here. Lost my little bolt there, so I'm going to come in and hit that. That's a really tight piece of detail and it could be hard to do it. The edge is right up against that bolt, so it can be hard to hit. Just do the best you can. Trying to hit tiny details like this is part of building your brush control. The more you try to paint tiny things, generally the better you get at it, as long as you're not, as long as you're keeping your brush strokes pretty consistent. And I want to bring in a hard dark line down there, and we'll work on the other side. Alrighty. Now front and side that we can kind of see. Now here is where we could have the purple reflecting into this metal because it's right up against purple down here. So really the proper thing to do here is to bring up our highlights with a bit of purple or to glaze our purple over the highlights. So we'll consider that as we move on with this. But first I'm going to paint the NMM. With me, I tend not to mix that color into my NMM. I want to actually get my non-metallic metal looking correct first. And then I will just glaze to put the environmental colors in. I find that allows me to keep it looking realistic. Another thing is with overlapping plates, even if they're in shadow, you can keep them a little darker. But you also can just emphasize the edges, the bottom edges of the plate as it comes out from underneath that shadow. Good. Yeah, David's OSL class is good. I mean, let's face it, almost all the instructors at ReaperCon are tops. David runs a very hands-on class, so be prepared. Which I think is good because you've got to just jump in. Even when you're not comfortable, sometimes it pays to just jump in. So I'm bringing up those highlights. There is something in that tree, and it's something large. Oh, it's a squirrel. It's a big squirrel. I'm like this bush, like this grove of bamboo right over our the top of our fence is like shaking violently, and I'm like, what? Silly animals. Maybe he thought that the bamboo was more, Oh, I see. Oh, I see. It's a couple of different squirrels. I'm like, the bamboo just looks like animals are having a party in it at this point. They're trying to distract me in the final moments of my stream. But yeah, hands-on classes can make you feel uncomfortable because you're like, I don't know if I'm ready to just jump into this. Maybe I just want to watch and listen, but really just dive in. Don't listen to that part of yourself. Most of the time, if you just don't judge yourself quite as harshly, you should just let yourself do it. Even if you're making mistakes, especially if you're making mistakes. When's the best time to make mistakes? It's when the instructor is right there to help you. If you just watch and listen and then you try to do it once you're back at your table at ReaperCon, it could be harder for you and you might have to end up trying to hunt down the instructor for feedback that the instructor could have easily given you in the class. So I really am in favor of, even when it's not in your comfort zone, just going with the hands-on and doing it in class, following along in class. That said, one of the great things about ReaperCon is that you can hunt down your instructors after the fact if you want to show them something that you were trying their techniques from class on and get feedback. You can do that. That's one of the great things about ReaperCon. All right, so bringing in a shadow here, we've got the cloak casting a shadow down here, so we would get a lot of shadow color in this area on this plate and the one above it. But yes, I will be watching ReaperCon from afar, being distracted by a tiny puppy. And I don't know what the streaming schedule will be like. Last time, I know the streams were kind of like canceled during the con because they have other content they put up direct from the con. So on the bottom here where the toes come out, you are going to see a highlight there. So I'm going to put in a high highlight. And then down here on the backward facing edge, you're going to get a little bit of reflected or bounce light, usually up from the environment. Once I figure out what basing we're going to be using, I may color that, but not yet. Now let's look at this side of the leg here. Needs a little bit of work. I think my shadow's a little bit misplaced here. It should be in line with the shadow above it. So now we've got a shadow running all the way down here. And like I said, I'll bring in some purple here, but not quite yet. First we need a highlight. And because I know I'm going to have some bounce light there with the purple, I'm going to maybe highlight a little higher than I might normally. Because I know that doing the glaze is going to drop the lightness down, right? It's going to shade this a little bit. So if I still want that light to show, that bounce light to show, then I need to bring it up. Now let's grab actually wrong color, right color. I'm gonna get some Imperial Purple, put just a drop into the palette. Make a glaze. That means at least 1:1, maybe even 1:2 paint to water. Let's go 1:1 and see how it looks. That's pretty good. With dark translucent colors, 1:1 is pretty thin. When you're working with colors that have a lot of white in them, that's when you're going to need to thin it more. But darks obviously don't have white in them usually, or if they do have a white, it's just a touch. If it's a grayed out color. So these don't take much thinning. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that purple and I'm going to put it, brush it just gently right over this area to try to get a little bit of purple suggestion in there. Now I've got a little bit of that. I do want to bring in a little bit more of my highlight. Don't want to lose it. So we've got a little bit of the purple showing through there. This one's probably not as purple, so I'm going to correct that a little bit. All right, a little bit of a reflection. And I want to get this side of the chest here a bit. That's a whole different ball of yarn, just so to speak. That could be covered in its own separate stream, ArrowWiz. So I'm not going to get to that one today. I just did a PDF. If you're on my Patreon, I just did a PDF on mixing your own highlights and mixing your own shadows. There are 2 PDFs for the $5 tier, and they're last month and this month. And I do cover like how mixing highlights is pretty much I cover like different colors of light and stuff. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. If you didn't know I have a Patreon, I do. It's got a ton of content on it, so it's a great buy because when you sign on, you do get access to all past content for the last 3.5 more years. And I'm always trying to do new stuff and freshen up and find topics that I've missed. So give it a gander. But yeah, if you're on there, I did cover this specific topic very recently. The color of your light can affect the color of your shadows too, ArrowWiz. It's a complicated topic. So the color of the light affects the actual stuff that it's falling on, but it also affects your shadow color. But a lot of that it can be kind of wasted at this scale. With little minis with 28 mil, you really are generalizing a lot. Whereas when you're working with really big models like busts or 1/6 scale or 1/10 scale or statues or even like 120 millimeter figures, sometimes even 75 millimeter, you can do a lot of this stuff. You can get a lot more kind of finessey about like your colors and how they're working. With 28 millimeter, because we have to pop the shadows so and the highlights, we have to exaggerate them. Because of that, subtle effects like color reflection in metal tend to get a little bit lost, and we tend to have to generalize and make them, you know, there, but they tend not to pop a lot. Likewise, when we try to use a colored light over metal, like remember that you have to use that colored light over everything then, essentially. If you can't just make that color reflect in the metal, you have to think about how it would look over every color on the mini, which is a big, sometimes very difficult depending on the color of your light. Hello from California to Brazil. Vitor Silva, or something like that. But hi, I'm Anne. I work for Reaper Miniatures. We're almost to the end of this episode. I was just touching up some of my non-metallic metal on the kitty here on his armor. We painted the ball of yarn today for his coat of arms. It's actually sculpted on the shield. You can see it there. This is Reaper Miniatures model, Catfolk Paladin 4051. So it is a metal figure. It is made of mostly tin. And I think I'm going to drop a little bit of shadow just down here. And I need a little bit of darker shadow here on the shoulder. So I'm using my charcoal, or my carbon gray, with a little bit of the moonstone blue in it. It's thinned way down, like 1:1. I just need a little bit darker. With non-metallic metal, how dark your shadow is will directly impact how shiny the metal looks. So even though this is a very pale non-metallic metal, I'm trying to keep it really pale, but I need to darken down my shadows. And the easiest way to do that is with super thin paint, where I can just build it up in a really precise area. Blend it in a bit. And I need to put a shadow over here. So mostly NMM adjustment. We still have to do the sword, and I want to do it NMM, but I want a glowing purple tip, I think, so that it goes with the model. We'll have to do that next time we paint our kitty, since we are almost done today. Hope you all have a nice weekend planned, a nice relaxing weekend. I'm going to do some do some cooking. I'm working on crocheting a ball for our new puppy. Just as kind of to see if I can make like a toy. And we haven't really done a lot of these little scales either. I'm going to put a shadow at the top of each of them where the other scales or the helmet overlap, just to give them a little more dimension. We'll have to shut up the stream soon. But we'll just finish that. So giving that, you see how I painted that darker shadow up there. They're not so flat looking now. I can come in with a highlight. Wherever they stick out, you should have a highlight. Because they're going to be, you can see how these are kind of sticking out over each other. So doing the scale armor like this is actually very simple to make it look decent. I think the squirrels are at war in my tree, or in the neighbor's tree. They're just like scrapping at each other over there. Alrighty. So this is our kitty. As he stands, we'll have to make a list next time. Although he's such a simple figure, I didn't make a list of things to finish. But really, the sword is the big one. We got this NMM looking a little bit better. I still feel like I need a little bit more over here on this side. But in general, the armor's looking good. And then it's just like really the shield, just highlighting the outside. And yeah, we're almost done. And then I do want to do basing. I want to do a base for this guy. I just have to think about where he is. He has a simple, very simple flagstone kind of base, but it's so flat that we could turn it into anything. So there's a lot of potential on this base to turn our kitty into something, and give him a really unique basing. So we can think about that and figure out what we'd like to do. You guys can think about it too. And you can toss out suggestions. No guarantees I'll take any, but you might like say something that sounds really cool. So we'll talk about that all next time on the Kitty. On Monday, we are back with, and we're almost done with her too. We are back with Madame Delia. And in our last streams, we've finished all the freehand. We need to pop up the red and the cream up on her upper sleeves here. And finish her blue. And other than that, it's just going to be like kind of doing a tile pattern on the floor here. Like a parquet tile. Or a really like intricate marble tile. I haven't decided. But we'll be doing that on her on Monday. So do not miss it. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. And it's been really fun hanging out with you this week. And hopefully I'll have a pup date. I didn't have any fresh puppy pictures today, but hopefully I'll have a pup date by Monday. All right? Another reminder, I will be streaming on my own stream, twitch.tv/paintingbig, tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. USA Central Time. So, yeah. Oh, John's out of town, so Reaperland might not be on. Got it. And Reaper Errant should be on tonight. Got it. All right. Thanks, Quindy, for all of your hard work. And yeah, everybody, I'll see you guys either tomorrow on my stream or on Monday. Bye-bye.